Hello and welcome to Women of Influence podcast. Hi, I'm Jaylyn with the J Group Real Estate Team.
The Great American Speak Off.
One of my favorites.
Hello, everyone, and welcome yet again to another Women of Influence podcast. Y'all know how I love talking to women who influence other women in particular. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Miss Shyla Bassey. Welcome, Shyla.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So excited. So everyone, Shyla is a guru at helping people to get their credit scores to a rock star status so they can afford to purchase a home. So they can be in a position to purchase a home. Shyla, tell us about your magic that you do to help people.
Oh my goodness. I genuinely believe that the simplicity of credit and making it simple for clients to just navigate their scores is what makes the difference. In helping clients over the last few years, I've recognized that sometimes just the simple education on how our scores are calculated, how to maintain those scores really sets the standard for helping people reach their goals. And so I lead with education, Jaylyn, and helping people understand what categories are impacting their credit profile first so that they have a strategy of where to start, but also a clear direction of where they're going with their credit scores. You know, one of the things I have found is that sometimes many don't even know the full calculation of how their scores are created, let alone the true range of our credit scores. And so I always like to lead with our scores can go from a 300 to an 850. However, once you get into that 700 range, the doors of opportunity not only are endless, but it allows many clients across the country to save a ton of money. So education is the key with the strategic plan to help every individual client reach their goal is my priority.
I love that. And tell me about how you educate people. Like, what sort of media or format do you typically use?
So I live on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Those are all of my go-to places to educate in a more public standpoint. But one of the things I do here locally is I even participate in co-hosting events with other partners, whether that's mortgage professionals, real estate professionals, or even insurance professionals, where I'm providing knowledge, oftentimes via conversation or PowerPoint, on the power of credit. And so I'm truly can be found anywhere sharing the impact of why we need to take our score so seriously now versus waiting for when we need to use our credit profiles. So I'm all over social media, but love doing in-person events as well to share the power of what credit can do.
Okay, so smart. And so what are some of the most common misconceptions about your credit score and your credit?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I hear most often is that negative items have to stay on our credit profile for 7 to 10 years. And I really love demystifying the fact that if we do nothing, yes, those items will stay there for 7 to 10 years. But when we take ownership of the fact that as consumers, we have the right to dispute and challenge any derogatory marks, then that's what opens up the door for people to have negative items removed far before 7 to 10 years. So that's a myth I hear all the time. You don't have to wait to have those items come off. Now, a second thing that I hear a lot is, hey, Shyla, I have these collections, I have these charge-offs on my credit profile. If I pay them, my score is going to go up, right? Well, not exactly. One of the things collection agencies love is they want their money. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to remove that from a client's credit profile. So I love educating clients before you send your hard-earned money to any of these collection agencies. Ensure that you, number one, have a plan in place that they will remove it from your credit profile if you do pay. And so that's one that I find myself sharing a lot because I help so many people that have paid their collections in the past. And guess what? Their credit scores are still in the same position with a collection still on their credit profile. And
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
two of the common things I hear so often around our credit profiles.
That is just so frustrating for a lot of people, and like they don't know. So I'm so happy that you're providing the information, the education out there for people to understand how credit actually works. So what are the top two things that I could do to totally wreck my credit right now?
Well, the first thing for anyone, one late payment has the ability to bring our credit scores down triple digits. And I hear it so often, hey, Shyla, I don't have a lot, just a couple late payments. Believe it or not, that's one of the biggest impacts on our credit profile. So if someone really wanted to bring their scores down, one late payment is more than enough to do it. The second thing, oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask you real quick, what is considered to be late? How many
Yes.
days late?
Typically, after 30 days of payment is when the creditor will then send it to the credit bureaus that this particular client has missed a payment.
Mm,
That is the grace period that they typically will give before they send it to the bureaus.
got it. Make your payments on time, everyone.
So important, so important. And I'll tell you truly, the second thing that can really impact our scores is credit card utilization. You know, recognizing what's taking place in our economy, debt is increasing in all capacities. However, specific to credit card debt, that's 30% of our credit profile. So as soon as someone surpasses 30% of their overall limit, automatically points are going to reduce on their credit profile. Those are the two fastest ways, truly, to see a credit score drop, and also the two fastest ways to see a credit score go up if those areas have a strategy.
Got it. So I had a question. I had a question in my head. Where did it go? So, oh, I've heard, maybe this might be a misconception. Maybe you can tell me if it's true or not. But I've heard that if you have lines of credit, like credit cards, whatnot, and you close one of them down, that will actually hurt your credit score. Is that true?
That is true.
Oh,
Here's the reason why. So 15% of our scores is just the length of our credit history. And so I always like to paint the picture. Imagine you have had an account for 10 to 15 years. When you close that account, that 10 to 15-year history is no longer being included in your calculation.
oh my goodness.
So when you close that, now we're looking at a new average age of history, which, assuming you've had other accounts in that period, more than likely will bring it down to 8 years on average or less. And that in itself can drop someone's score pretty dramatically, especially if they're not expecting it.
Oh my goodness. So don't close those accounts, people. You can pay them off, but don't close them out, right?
Yeah, I actually answer that question often because so many people have credit cards that they've had open for years and they just don't use it. They're hanging out in the wallet. I always say just keep it open. Even
Yeah.
if that's one transaction a year, keep it open because that history is what's building the credibility over the longevity of their credit.
Got it. Yeah, I think one of my accounts I've had for like 24 years, which is ridiculous. I've just kept it open the whole time. I'm like, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't have any balance on it, but it's still there.
Yeah.
So, Shyla, tell us about one of your favorite success stories from somebody that you've worked with to help them improve their credit.
Oh gosh, I have so many. But there's a young lady that I specifically always talk about because her story was so important to me. She was a client of mine based in Louisiana. And prior to working with me, she was doing everything she could to prepare her own credit, right? Grabbing letters and templates from the internet. She had even paid another company in the past. And when she got started with me, her scores were in the mid fives. I would say probably 530, 540, and 555 on the three bureaus. And one of the major things she had on her credit was a ton of medical bills. And over the course of working with her we were together for about 6 months in our program, her credit score went up, believe it or not, over 180 plus points. So that put
Wow.
her well into the high 600s. And her big picture goal was to be able to be in a position to purchase a home, her and her mother. And so because of not only taking the time to repair her credit, but really listening to the guidance we provided, it put her in a position to where she decided to not get the home. She decided to start a business with her credit instead. But to me, that was the value, positioning her to have her purchasing power to do anything that she wanted with her credit. She still is looking to purchase a home, but right now she's thriving in her business. And it opened up the door for her to get business funding, to excel and grow her inventory in her nursing business. So I'm super excited for her and just so glad that she took the chance to improve her credit with guidance so that she wasn't, I say, kicking rocks for more months and more years, just trying to figure it out on her own. And that's just one because she was just so diligent in the process to make sure she got where she needed to be.
That's amazing. I love that. And like, it's good for her that she listened to your advice and followed your advice and, did your program. So if somebody wanted to sign up for your program, where would they go, Shyla?
Great question. So one of the first places I recommend is you're open to going to my website, so BasseySolutions.com, to where you'll be able to set up a consultation. I lead in the conversation to make sure that you have a strategy and a plan to reach your goals. I don't believe in cookie cutter service. So the best place to start with me is by scheduling a consultation so that we can design a plan for you, especially to help you to reach the goals that you desire. So that's the easiest and best place for us to start the process.
I love that you said that you're not cookie cutter, because that drives me absolutely insane. And I'm like, well, how do you know that that's going to work for me? My situation's different, right? It might take me 12 months instead of 3 months, whatever the situation is. So I love that you said that. That's amazing.
Absolutely. I have found that every client needs a different strategy, and not every client needs credit repair. And so I always encourage clients to, and I tell them this, the secret to getting ahead is getting started. And the conversation in itself is a starting point that can really set the tone for wherever they want to go. Many people have big goals, and I just want to be a piece of the catalyst to help them. Let's get to that goal. Let's take a step.
That's amazing. Well, Shyla, I will tell you that I talk to literally hundreds of people every month that are in a situation that they need help with their credit, and they really honestly don't know where to turn. So I'll be referring a lot of people your way. But outside of that, a couple of things that I have been suggesting that they do, and maybe you can speak on these two particular things. I recommend that they download and use the Self app, because I used it personally and it boosted my credit score by 40 points in only 3 weeks. And I also tell them to try rentalkarma.com. They can upload their on-time rental history, and it reports to all 3 credit bureaus. So what can you talk about with those? And then this is not to necessarily promote those 2 things, but I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, we are talking about the same things, because both of those are 2 phenomenal ways to build credit. I love the fact that rental history can be added to our credit profiles, because I always look at it like this. If we miss a payment or multiple payments at an apartment complex, the fastest thing to be reported is an eviction. But I always say, why not let your good history be rewarded for you and your credit profile? So I am a firm believer in having positive history added from renting, as well as Self, a simple way to start adding more positive payment history to help you boost your credit profile. Those are 2 simple credit building tools that can help so many people. And I'll add one more, Jalen, because depending if someone has a credit card or not on their profile, adding a secured card, believe it or not, can make a substantial difference if you do not have any open credit cards on your profile. Those 3 things combined together, man, that's a dynamic trio to help someone really improve their credit profile.
Yeah, on that note, that leads me to, getting a secured credit card reminded me of possibly adding yourself to somebody else's credit card. Like, one thing that I learned recently was, the fact that I was added to my husband's American Express. I never use it, but I realized that it shows up on my credit report, the balance. I'm like, well, hey, I've never used that card. Why is it showing $3,000? And so that's something that I didn't even know about, that could happen, which I found that very interesting.
Yeah, authorized users is not talked about a ton. Right now on social media, there's a lot of talk around trade lines and people paying to get on someone else's credit profile. I'm a believer, if you know a friend or a family member who has had a long established credit profile, leverage them. Because this kind of goes back to our conversation a moment ago around age of our credit history. When you get added to someone's credit profile as an authorized user, you get to benefit from the length of time that they've had that account open. And intentionally, you want to make sure you're added when they have low to no balance on that card, because that utilization can impact you as well. So there's really three categories that ends up helping when you get added as an authorized user. And it's one of those simple tools that can make a difference, especially if you already know someone who you can get added to their card.
That's great information. Now, if you are added as an authorized user, are you responsible for debt that's accrued onto that card, or is the primary user responsible for that debt?
Ooh, good question. The primary user is who is responsible. However, if you're added as an authorized user, what I recommend is don't get access to the card. Just be added for the history so that there's no temptation to swipe and there's no impact on either party if you use the card. That's what I recommend.
Interesting. So you
Yeah.
can add yourself as an authorized user, but not necessarily have access to the card. Okay, that's good to know.
Absolutely. I recommend that, especially when individuals are asking family members. It's like, hey, just share. I don't need the card. I just want to benefit from the history. And
That's a really great tip. I love that so much. I'm like, hey, everybody, did you know? Look what I learned today.
Absolutely. And that's what helps so many people, because it typically takes about, I say, a reporting period. So I give a grace of 30 to 45 days for that history to hit someone's credit profile. And it could be substantial, especially if they have high utilization and they add an authorized user that gives them some room to wiggle. Oh, it can work wonders on the credit profile. But yes, I do suggest no access to the card so that the primary card holder also is not worried about any reverse potential impacts to their credit as well.
Cool beans, cool beans. Now, I do talk to people who have just gone through a recent bankruptcy, whether it's Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. Can you talk a little bit about the two different types of bankruptcies and how that affects one's credit and credit report?
Yeah, so I'll start the statement with bankruptcy is not credit repair. Bankruptcy does provide solutions to, I like to say, take the weight off of your shoulders on the debt, right? To woosah, I don't have to worry about it. However, a lot of times with bankruptcy, all of the negative remarks that were there before the bankruptcy, late payments, accounts and collections, are all typically still there after the bankruptcy. So it's alleviating the debt, but it's not necessarily supporting your credit profile. But I always lead with good news. Typically 2 years after a bankruptcy has been discharged is when we as consumers can start the process of challenging the derogatory information that was connected to that bankruptcy. And between Chapter 7 and Chapter 11, I always encourage people speak with a bankruptcy attorney so that you know which option is best for you, especially if you're a business owner or if you're just operating from a personal standpoint, because they'll provide you the proper guidance as to which one makes the most sense for you. But a lot of times I find that Chapter 11, of course, is used for business owners if they're trying to consolidate and or get rid of some old and past debts. But the good news is there is light at the end of the tunnel, even if you have gone through or you're going through a bankruptcy to still improve your credit profile. Here's the news. You don't have to wait 7 to 10 years to start improving your credit after a bankruptcy. You can start truly as soon as you're done with it to start rebuilding your credit profile. And I hear this often, especially for those who are looking to purchase homes. Don't wait 7 to 10 years to reach your goals. Start as soon as you begin the process.
Yeah, I think speaking of bankruptcy, regardless of which way you go, I think a lot of people also don't necessarily understand that credit card debt is in fact unsecured debt, meaning that they can't come after you and like take your house and take your car unless it's, you haven't made your car payments in several months, or they might repo your car. But like, I've never really understood why, I guess it's depending on the person's situation, why somebody would do a Chapter 13 and make payments when you can just have a Chapter 7 and have all of that debt like wiped out for the most part, right? Can you talk about like maybe some of the reasons why somebody would choose one over the other?
Honestly, I think a lot of times it comes from a space of urgency and wanting to just not have to worry about it. And I haven't, outside of that fear and urgency to just say, I don't have the money to cover these things, it sometimes will push people in the direction that is not always the best option for them, but it provides relief. That's it. And I think them having proper guidance and hearing all of their options up front makes a difference. That's
Yeah.
what leads them down one path versus the other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was, reminds me, and I'll be a little bit open and vulnerable here, but back when I was in my late 20s, is my first marriage, and things didn't work out, unfortunately. And I got a divorce, and I ended up filing for bankruptcy. And I remember talking to the counselor, and I was like, oh, I want to do a chapter 13. I want to, like, pay my debts. I just want to have the payments restructured. And I remember she advised me, just file chapter 7. That way you don't have to, like, pay any of it back. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. But I mean, it worked out. And of course, my credit was damaged for a period of time, but I didn't have the education that's out there and available to people now to understand the kind of, what that looks like, what I can do in the meantime, things like that. So going through essentially 7 years of, not having any credit available, I wasn't able to get a credit card. And so really what it did though, which was kind of nice, it forced me to live within my means, right? I had to live with what I was being paid and not rely on my credit cards. That was pretty cool. So anyway, just a little side story.
Yeah, but I mean, thank you for your transparency and sharing your journey, because I think a lot of people need the hope that if they're navigating through bankruptcy, there is light. You will get through it. And one of the things I love sharing with clients is explore all options before you move forward with one, because there are options, and all of them require different steps, but it's worth exploring before choosing one thing to reach, especially their financial goals around credit.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to talk about, maybe one or two more things. I know my husband, and hopefully his children won't be listening to this podcast, but I know that one or two of his daughters have made the mistake of co-signing for one of their siblings, and then the sibling ends up, like, not making any of the payments. So as a result, their credit gets completely jacked up. Can you tell us about, like, how that works?
Yes. So when you're co-signing, basically you are a borrower and a co-borrower on a loan. And no matter if the co-signer or the original borrower misses a payment, that is going to equally impact both credit profiles for the life of that loan. And so I'm a big believer, especially from a co-signing perspective, if it's necessary, obviously you're helping a family member, it makes sense. But it's important to recognize that it can be detrimental to impact the ability to get new loans if there's multiple late payments or an account goes into a charged off status because we were helping someone reach their goal. And one of the things I always educate clients around is once your score is high, that doesn't mean you can help everybody co-sign on the product. That happens, believe it or not. Many people are givers at all the time, and they want to support their family to reach their goals. And I suggest help them build their credit as well, or at least let me help them with a game plan to protect both of you for the longevity of your credit.
That
But
sounds
co-signing, it definitely impacts both parties in a good way if there's good payment history, and of course negatively if payments are missed.
good to know. Now, you mentioned something when you were talking just now about if something is charged off. Can you explain to us what that means?
Yeah. So typically after 90 days of a company trying to collect a payment, 90 days past due, it goes into a collection status. After the collection status, of course, the primary creditor is still trying to collect on the debt from you as the consumer. Generally, after 120 days of them trying to collect the debt, they will then charge off the debt on their books and typically sell that debt to a collection agency for them to try to then collect the debt from you. That's the difference a lot of times between collection and charge-offs. The collection is often still with the original creditor, whereas the charge-off account has now been sent to a third-party agency to start contacting you to then take over that debt and collect payment from you. And so that's a charge-off on a credit profile.
Interesting. So I've heard that, when something is charged off, it goes to collections, that if you want to, you can offer them a settlement, like pennies on the dollar. I'm sure you know a little bit about that. Can you explain a little bit how that would work maybe?
Yeah. So one of the things when it comes to debt, and I tell clients this all the time, the debt, whether you dispute it, settle it, or not, of course, the debt is still yours. What happens though for us as consumers, we get to leverage our rights. So I encourage clients, if you want to pay the debt, negotiate to pay less than what you owe. Because these companies, no matter what, they just want to collect anything that they can so that they don't have to keep contacting us for it.
Right.
So when it comes to negotiating that debt, there's opportunities to where you can do a settlement, where you suggest a specific amount that you're willing to pay them in exchange for them to stop contacting you and it to be updated to paid as agreed on your credit profile. Some collection agencies will be proactive and send you a settlement offer. And I tell clients, you don't have to accept it. You can negotiate for less. You have that right. So that's one thing that happens with charge-offs. The other thing is there's the pay for deletion. I've had individuals that have had situations where their cars have been totaled and unfortunately there wasn't enough equity in the vehicle to cover it. So they're left with this $10,000 debt. So some say, hey, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I want to purchase a vehicle. What does it take if I just want to pay it? I tell everyone, if you want to pay it, leverage a pay for deletion, which is a simple template letter that can be sent to the creditor. If I pay X amount, are you willing to remove this from my credit profile? That is critical as clients move forward in deciding if they want to pay different debts for that reason.
That is so smart. Such great information. And how long does it typically take for one of the creditors to remove something off of your credit report?
Timing varies. I would say I've seen anywhere from 45 days to 12 months, depending on how many items are being challenged. And the reason I say 45 days is once a consumer sends a letter to the credit bureaus or even the creditor, they typically have 30 to 45 days to respond. Before COVID, it was 30. Post-COVID, it's been about a 45-day period for some type of response to take place. So I would say that's the earliest that anything can be removed or adjusted on a credit profile.
Got it. Thank you. And one last thing, for real this time. What does having inquiries do to your credit report? I know a lot of people tell you, oh, it's a soft credit inquiry, don't worry about it, but it ends up showing up anyway. So what does that do to your credit?
Yeah, so inquiries, believe it or not, only make up about 10% of our credit profile. So that equates to about 55 points in the algorithm. And between soft inquiries and hard inquiries, soft inquiries have zero impact to our credit profile. Hard inquiries, meaning a lender has pulled your credit because they want to determine your credit worthiness, typically can cause a score to drop. On average, I've seen anywhere from 5 points to about 15 points. Typically not substantial.
Okay.
However, for someone that is consistently having hard inquiries on their credit profile, that can cause them to pretty much lose access to the full 55 points in that category.
Oh my goodness.
So one of the things I tell clients is if you don't need it, don't apply for it. Because although 55 points on the credit profile to a lender, that would show up as too many recent inquiries, which is its own declination reason to a lender.
Got it. So I'm a liar because I'm going to keep asking you questions. So how would one know if actually the credit inquiry is a soft or a hard? Like, how would you even know?
Yeah, so the easiest way to determine is a lot of times I get asked, well, when I pull my credit, Shyla, through my credit monitoring, is that a soft pull or is that a hard pull? Any credit monitoring system is always going to be a soft inquiry. The main times that individuals will know that they're going to have a hard inquiry is if they've given someone approval for some type of purchase, an apartment, a home, a vehicle. And I would say insurance, but typically insurance is actually, it's a soft pull. It's generally only lenders or apartment complexes that are doing a hard pull to have a full view. The other way that anyone can see what's a hard inquiry versus soft is by taking a peek at your credit profile. One of the simple things at the bottom of almost every credit report is you're going to see inquiries and they're going to be categorized. And you'll see your hard inquiries. And on some bureaus, you'll see the soft inquiries down at the bottom. The hard inquiries, you'll see right on the credit report.
That's so interesting. So one thing I learned the other day, because I was pulling my free annual credit report. I think it's annualcreditreport.com. And they sent me TransUnion and Experian. Equifax wasn't working for whatever reason. But I had the misconception that when I got my credit report, they would have my FICO score on there. And it doesn't. It just shows you the history of your credit. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That's it. Yeah. And that's actually a question I get all the time as well. Shyla, what score is the right score? Because between our bank accounts, credit monitoring tools, and then what lenders tell you, all of those scores look very different. So one of the things I do want to differentiate is there's a Vantage score and a FICO score. A FICO score is the score that an auto dealership or a lender who, if you're purchasing a home, that's the score that matters most when it comes to purchasing something. What we'll see on 95% of all credit monitoring tools is a Vantage score. So, for example, many people use Credit Karma, and we get the question, is that my score, or is my score lower or higher? The reason those scores are different is because they are different scoring models. It's not that the score is wrong, it's just a different scoring model from what a lender will pull. So the follow-up question that comes to that is, well, where do I see my closest FICO score? One of the apps that I recommend that can help you see that is Experian.com. Experian.com will allow you to see the closest score to your FICO score, which is oftentimes the closest score to what a lender would pull. But that's kind of the breakdown between the FICO and the Vantage score. Your credit monitoring tool is accurate in giving you your Vantage score.
Okay, that is such great information. This has been so educational. I've learned so much, and I'm sure a lot of our audience has as well. Everybody, if you would like some more information on how to improve your credit, repair, whatnot, please go to BasseySolutions.com. Have a conversation with Shyla. Just sit down and see how she can help you. I guarantee you it's going to change your life.
I love helping, and truly even just answering questions. It goes a long way. That question you've been Googling or searching on TikTok, I'm happy to answer for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shyla, so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've just learned so much. I found it just fascinating, all the information, and I just loved it so much. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. Super grateful.
You're welcome. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye. Take care.